G'day everyone. Today I'm speaking with Austin Federa, co-founder of a new blockchain network, DoubleZero, and former strategy lead at the Solana Foundation. DoubleZero went live quite recently, successfully launched their mainnet just over a week ago. Congratulations. Austin, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Dude, it's great to speak to you again. I think we spoke quite some time ago when I was working at Cointelegraph. So this is my first time chatting with you as DoubleZero co-founder, not Solana, a new man.
Yeah, and you've gone independent too.
Talk to me about DoubleZero. Full disclosure, I kind of put the non-technical in non-technical. So if you could run me through DoubleZero at like a high level, same way that you'd explain it to a caveman kind of thing, if you as best as you could.
Yeah, sure. So what we're setting out to do at DoubleZero and what the network we've launched is the first iteration of is an alternative to the public internet. We're basically trying to build a new parallel internet suitable for blockchains and other types of high performance distributed systems. And that's kind of the whole ballgame. I mean, today, all of our blockchain technology operates through the public internet. And the public internet is an awesome, great resource. We use it for everything from recording podcasts to, watching videos. But when you get into serious tech and serious finance, they don't really do anything over the public internet nowadays. Wall Street has been using private networking for 2 decades or more. There's no trading firms in the world that trade over the public internet, except when they're trading crypto assets on blockchains. And even the Web 2 giants of, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Facebook, they all run massive private fiber networks nowadays to supplement the public internet because the public internet can't keep up with the demand for YouTube videos or Instagram reels. And so our whole thesis for DoubleZero is it's time that blockchain gets its own dedicated infrastructure, just like these traditional tech players. But we have to build it in a very different way. We have to build it with censorship resistance in mind and multi-party checks and balances. So it's worthy of being a crypto native project.
Initial question straight off the rip on that one is, how does this fit in with like ethos of decentralization more broadly? Because I know that if we're going to be moving the internet over to a more like to DoubleZero, isn't that pushing it more towards a centralized kind of option? Or what are the kind of like fallbacks that you have in store for that?
So for starters, I think we would say to every protocol adopting DoubleZero, you should still have a fallback mode that goes to the public internet. So maybe it's a safe mode you fall into and you scale back your transaction count to something the public internet can support. But I think folks would be surprised at how centralized the public internet actually is today. There's only about 10 to 15 companies that are tier 1 ISPs. These are folks with global IP transit that can move data around the world. And then if you get down to like the data center level or the individual consumer level, you usually don't have more than 1 or 2 options in your market. In the United States, most people are serviced by one internet service provider. Most people in Europe maybe have 2, but at the end of the day, the government runs all of your fiber under most of your streets in Europe. And in other parts of the world, the government, in the UAE, both carriers are owned by the government. When you really look into how censorship resistant the internet is, the cracks start to show really quickly. And so we today on the DoubleZero network, we have 11 independent contributors contributing fiber to the network. If we get 4 more, we are effectively as decentralized as the public internet. From a top level model. And then over time, we'll continue to add more and more contributors because our goal is to exceed that. The other thing to keep in mind is the public internet gives you no guarantees on transit or data integrity. So when you're sending data over the public internet, you're kind of just shouting into the void. It's sort of just like throwing a letter in a bottle and putting it in the ocean and being like, oh, the tide's generally going that direction. It'll get there.
At a very high speed, but yes.
At a very high speed. Yes.
Yep.
Maybe it's more like throwing a bottle into a typhoon or something. But but at the end of the day, what you are sending is basically there's no guarantees about the path your traffic takes or the time it takes to get there. So if you see what happens, like if I'm sitting in New York now, and where in the world are you today?
I'm in Sydney.
Okay, perfect
Australia.
example.
Yep.
So to get to Sydney, there's a direct route, and then there's the route that your data actually takes. So a direct route to Sydney would probably go from New York over directly to the west coast of the United States, probably San Diego. And there's a cable system off the west coast of the United States that basically goes directly down to Sydney. It makes a quick stop in New Zealand on the way and basically continues down that way. There's another way to go, which is you'd go down the coast of South America and then you go across from there on that cable system. None of those routes are how our data is moving between us right now. Almost certainly what's happening is my data is bouncing around inside of the United States a bunch before it finally gets transit on a North Pacific cable, crosses kind of up over near Japan, then makes its way down through Singapore, where then it eventually clears in through Indonesia, goes into Perth or somewhere around there, and then makes its way over to you. It's a very circuitous indirect route, and because we're on Riverside recording a podcast, no one really cares. However, if you are a trader, that additional latency, even if it's only 50 or 70 milliseconds added, in this case, it would probably be much more than that, that really creates dynamics that are very challenging for any type of trading system. Because when you have lack of determinism on when you submit a trade, that is market risk. If you are a blockchain and, why is it so hard to run a Solana node in Sydney? Well, it's because the internet infrastructure, these lines are very limited in capacity down into Australia, and you need to be in sync with the rest of the network. And so you can run a validator in Australia, but it's usually slower. It's behind the tip of the chain, which means that you have higher skip rates, and it basically can't stay in sync with the rest of the network. This is not because Australia is too physically far away. The speed of light is pretty fast. We're actually able to get data there, no problem. The problem is it moves in a very indirect route. And so it's sort of akin to try and travel cross country and you can't take the highway. Instead, you have to go through all the local roads and all the county roads. And so what we're really doing is we're bypassing that entire system. And by having direct connections with fiber, we're able to move data much more quickly from especially over oceans.
That reminds me of this is a very poorly regurgitated kind of little anecdote here, but I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, but it was the story of I think it was Wall Street was talking about blowing up some kind of mountain or tunneling. There was some kind of thing where they had to demolish a bunch of shit because they're that's going to get us there. That's going to get our orders through at half a millisecond quicker than the other desks. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. So similar strat without the demolition.
Yeah. This is likely you're thinking about Project Hummingbird and Flash Boys.
Flash Boys. Yeah. That's it.
So
I was yep.
Yeah, this was the first kind of popularization, and Michael Lewis got a ton wrong in that book about how high-frequency trading works and all.
I think Michael Lewis, the entire Michael Lewis illusion was shattered after he covered SBF. I was like, fuck, if he wrote that about this guy, I can't trust The Big Short or Flash Boys or anything else anymore. I've just
100%.
That's anyway. Sorry, segue.
Yeah, so you're totally I mean, the FTX profile, all this stuff. So people kind of know that all this stuff is kind of going wrong at this point with this. And so, but setting aside kind of all the details of what he got wrong, high frequency trading does actually improve prices in the market. But he was right that there was this incredible advantage if you could just be 1 or 2 or 3 milliseconds faster than the competition. And that's what the entire point of high frequency trading is. And so they moved from, by the time spread networks was done, and the book came out, it was actually too slow. People had figured out what they were doing and they'd figured out faster ways. You saw the technology migrate from fiber lines to using microwave towers to move data even more quickly, because fiber optics are very fast, but the speed of light through glass is actually slower than the speed of light through air. And so you're in this advantage if you're able to run just through there. So, that's kind of, and then now people are even using faster technology like shortwave radio, stuff from the 30s, because it moves even more quickly, which is really interesting. So this is kind of the evolution of high frequency trading. We get to basically drift off of all of this innovation over the last 30 years, plus all the money that Facebook and Apple and Google and Microsoft have put into building subsea cables to distribute content and other things like that. The sort of the magic of DoubleZero, it's sort of why now? And it's well, blockchains are fast enough. We have Solana, we have Sui, we have Aptos, we have Monad, we have Mega ETH, we have all these new fast networks coming on board that can benefit from this high performance. That was not the case in 2020 when, you ran Geth locally and you got maybe 400 transactions per second maximum. We're at a place where this really matters. Plus, the other piece is the cost of access to some of this fiber has come down because now you have these just massive expansions of undersea fiber in general.
Okay. So with DoubleZero, how is it compatible with other blockchain networks? Can you explain kind of like how it plugs in and how other networks can kind of like layer on top of DoubleZero and utilize the infra? Are there any networks that it doesn't like plug into, or what's the go?
No. So this is a really low level network. This is not in itself a blockchain network. This is sort of it. It's akin to almost like getting a fiber connection into your house. In that, like, it doesn't matter if you have a Mac, doesn't matter if you have Linux or a PC or an iPhone or a printer. It can all communicate over that system. This is what's called an OSI, in this case, layer 1, 2, and 3 network. So it's very far down, way below like the stack of where the validator actually runs. And so from that perspective, we can support pretty much all high performance systems. There are a lot of technologies we can use on DoubleZero that are not available on the public internet. And so for a blockchain to make maximal use of DoubleZero, they do need to do some upgrades and modifications to their software. And we can get into a bunch of what those features are if you're curious. But that's, we're talking like weeks of work. We're not talking about like a very long process to adopt these kind of technologies.
I would actually be curious as to what kind of things, like what's the value prop that you would approach networks with and say, because I'm going to use a terrible analogy here, but in Australia, we revamped our internet very poorly, by the way, because the Australian government, it's not too great it's really good at infra, but also really bad at infra. But that's for another piece. But upgraded the internet to a thing called NBN, which was like basically high speed fiber optic to every house. It kind of works most of the time. I'm happy enough with it, but a lot of people have their grievances with it. So I'm imagining this in kind of like a similar way of being like, hey, we can actually plug you into a faster network underlying. Hopefully it's rolled out better than the Australian government did NBN. There will be 3 listeners that understand this analogy.
Screaming at their phones. Yes.
Exactly. So run me through, how you're kind of like approaching networks and saying like, this is what you got to do. And this is the advantage. This is like what's the sell?
Totally. So any network today can plug into DoubleZero and just operate with their existing software on it. There's advantages you get the more you customize. So there's this thing called XDP, which is it's a sort of a faster form of networking. It's a very low level software thing, but just enabling that gives you an additional bunch of performance boost. But the main things come from a technology called multicast. And multicast is like very, very exciting. So you've probably encountered some version of multicast in your daily life. It is how, if you have AirPlay or Chromecast or Sonos speakers, your phone sends one copy of the data out and it goes to all of the speakers in your house. Your phone's not sitting there sending out 13 different copies of the music to all the speakers. It's actually just sending out one copy of the music. And what's happening is your local Wi-Fi router is replicating the packets and replicating them out to all the places that they have to go to. And this is really efficient because it means you need far less bandwidth and far less power. So this happens today in every traditional financial exchange in the world. The way that they distribute new information, price feed updates, the price of Tesla has moved up by 1 cent or half a cent down or something along those lines. If I sent it out one at a time, the person who gets the data first is at a huge advantage, right? If you're number 2,000 in the list of like, who gets the new Tesla price updates, you'd be like, man, like what the hell? Like this guy got it like way before me. So what multicast does is it's hardware replication of packets. So the network automatically copies the data and sends it out to all the places that it needs to go, and it all arrives there at basically the same time. And so this is a huge increase in fairness, but the other nice thing about this is, let's take kind of the Australia example. If you are a validator in Australia and you are trying to communicate out, hey, we just built a block, now I have to send it out to 2,000 Solana nodes all around the world. Well, you need to, Solana uses something called turbines. So you send it to 200 people and they send it to 200 more, and then you send it to 200 more to get it all the way around the world. But even that sending out to 200, you now need 200 times the bandwidth that it takes you to build that block. Because you've got to send it out 200 times. And you have to send it out sequentially. So with multicast, you only have to send it twice. And then the network automatically replicates it. And that replication happens as close to the end user as possible. So it's a huge bandwidth savings, and it actually makes it possible to run validators in areas of the world that it wouldn't be possible before, because the reverse is true. If you have a validator in Australia that's receiving data, normally, and if you're a low-staked validator, you're going to get it last, and you're furthest away. With multicast, it's almost like dropping a rock in a pond. All the ripples propagate out at the same speed. And so if you're closer, yes, you'll get the data more quickly. But if you're further out, you're still going to get the data at the same rate as everyone else.
So it's actually just, it's like a mechanism of fairness of like,
absolutely. Yeah.
There is no transitory delay. I like the ripple effect. That's a really good visualization of how it works of like, okay. And then obviously people are limited by their own technical capacity, like at each kind of like point in that line as well.
Yes, exactly. But
okay.
It's like if you are able to basically, it's the closest we basically have to tuning into like FM radio. Like an infinite number of people can listen to the same radio station, and it doesn't put any additional tax on the person broadcasting the radio. That's not the case with like a YouTube stream. Everyone watching YouTube, if there's 1 million people concurrently watching us, like, the World Cup or something, there's 1 million copies of that data flying around. And so this is part of why it took so many years for folks to figure out how to stream big live sporting events, is because it's actually a very hard problem because the internet does not support multicast. And so
I love the tech that we built in the 20s is like, oh yeah, we can actually distribute this. And then the tech that we built in the 90s is like, oh fuck, actually we can't get this out to everyone.
Yeah, because no one ever thought the internet would be this big of a deal. It's pretty fun.
And now this is something I've heard from like computer science, like friends of mine that are actually technical and work in the field. But yeah, basically saying that the internet's kind of just, everyone thinks of it as this like incredibly advanced machine. But if you actually look into what holds it all together, it's kind of just duct tape pieces of everything that everyone just kind of stands there and looks at and goes like, okay, it's still working today. That's awesome.
Yep.
Let's no one touch it too much.
And the beauty is, as you said, it does still work. Like the internet is incredibly good at doing what we ask it to do, which is like, we're on a call right now and you're on about as far as you can get from me on the planet.
Yep,
and it's great.
Pretty much.
Like this works. This is incredible. This is this technology. And we're each paying $40 a month for an internet connection. Like this is unbelievable, right? This is like the power of like capitalism and the public internet to deliver goods. The trick is when you get above this, when you start to need performance beyond this, the next jump in price, there's no like, can I get internet plus, right? You have to go straight from the public internet to we're building our own subsea fiber cables. And that's the jump that like Meta made a bunch of years ago. They started building their own servers, then they built their own data centers, then they built their own cables. And what we're trying to do with DoubleZero is make it possible to have a much more sort of like cloud provider-like experience. And what I mean by that is like, you can show up to DoubleZero and say, hey, I got a server located here in New York. I want to join a network that also has a bunch of servers all over the world and communicate with them. And, I can just go and sign up for this connection, and I can pay a percentage of my validator's earnings, and I can access high-speed connectivity to almost anywhere in the world. And that really is like the power of this. It's like the cloud revolution was technological, sure, but it was mostly business model. It was the fact that you could show up to Amazon with a credit card and 15 minutes later have 40 servers ready to go. Whereas like a few years ago, if you were trying to get 40 servers in a data center, you'd call a guy, he might call you back, you'd have to submit some order forms, you'd probably have to wire the money, and then maybe 2 weeks later, you'd have your servers ready to go. And so what we are really focused on here over the long term is that kind of on-demand high-performance networking that we think can be pretty transformational because it lacks the vendor lock-in or the sort of walled garden that the cloud providers have. This is an area where decentralization can actually produce higher quality of service than centralization, which is pretty unique to be able to find in this day and age.
Can you run me through what DoubleZero is like doing right now as we speak? So, because I know that you guys launched, it would have been, was it October 2nd? Tokens up and running. What's whirring away underneath the surface right now? What's DoubleZero doing as of this moment?
Yeah, so if you go to doublezero.xyz/dashboard, you can actually see in real time all of the fiber links that are contributing to the DoubleZero network up and running. You can see their latencies, you can see what cities they connect. You can click on them and you can actually see how utilized they are, how much capacity is actually flowing through them. And you can see benchmarks relative to the public internet performance as well. And so, we're up and running with 70 links in 26 different cities around the world. And this is kind of just the start. We've added 3 links just in the last week. And so it's all about expanding access and continuing to connect more and more of the Solana network to start to DoubleZero. We've got about 25% of stake weight running on the network today.
Damn. Okay, that's cool.
It's a real network. It's not one of these projects that launches and then like, oh, we'll see, the thing will come soon. Like, no, it's all up and running. And it's fun to go around and click around and kind of experiment and see like, oh, how much are these lines being used? Why is this line in so much use relative to this other one? It's really awesome to kind of just see this in real time.
Stupid question. Are you guys installing fiber or are you running on other people's fiber? What's the go there in terms of like the actual network itself? How are these links running?
So this is a great question. So we do not actually run any fiber ourselves. This is all contributed by, basically network contributors that are contributing to the DoubleZero network. And this is where we have these 11 network contributors today. And so that's a mix of folks from high frequency trading firms to digital asset firms like Galaxy, to like TerraSwitch and Latitude, these data center providers, to some VCs that even have said, hey, we're going to go out and try and fund some high performance networking, to, like Rockaway X is a great example. They run a bunch of validators in Prague. They're a VC, but they're also an early Solana group. And, they said, hey, we want to be on the DoubleZero network, but we run in Prague. We are a Czech organization. We'd like to keep these validators here. So they went out and they got a fiber line that connects from Frankfurt to Prague. And so they've expanded the DoubleZero network to a new city, but they've added this bonus on performance to their validators that are located in Prague. So it's cool to see this whole thing like coming together, working. Like it's really awesome to kind of, no one has ever built a multi-party private network like this before. Every other private network that exists is run by one centralized organization, or at least one centralized organization holds all the keys to it. But we are not the administrators of these fiber lines or these DoubleZero devices that are sitting on the end of it. Just like any blockchain system, the person running the validator, it's their keys, it's their crypto, right? It's the exact same thing here.
Okay, cool. Dude, when we last spoke, you were strategy lead at the Solana Foundation. I'm curious as to what caused the move on from Solana. What was that like from like a professional, personal perspective? Because like last time we spoke, you were very much involved in like the Solana side of things. What was it like moving over and becoming a co-founder, starting your own thing? Run me through that.
Yeah, it's I left a really good, very high paying job at Solana Foundation to go build this. And, the reason for that is like, this is just one of those ideas that you couldn't get out of your head. And I think if you have that itch to go build a thing that you can't get out of your head, there's a good reason to go and do it. I'd been at Solana Foundation for 4 years at that point, which is kind of a good moment to sort of decide, hey, am I in this for another 6? Like, am I going to be a lifer at this organization? Or is there something else I want to go do? And, for me, the opportunity to come build this, like I would not have left to go build DoubleZero without my 2 incredible co-founders, because they both come from like the hardcore networking world, and trying to build something like this, as a solo founder, especially as someone who's coming just from the crypto side, would have been impossible. So Andrew McConnell and Matteo Ward have been just instrumental in like, it really is like a tri-party founding team on this. And you need the skills of all of us, because most of our engineers, they don't have really any crypto experience behind them at all. They're high performance networking engineers. And so it's been a really awesome to like build this team of also mostly like, I think the average age is probably about 34 on the project, much older than you see for most folks working in crypto these days, especially on an early stage startup. So it's been awesome to be able to pull this team together. But yeah, I mean, the Solana Foundation's doing awesome. It's also one of these things where it's like, we got through FTX, like they're doing fine. They didn't need me anymore.
Dude, that's so cool. Where did the idea for DoubleZero come from? You said that you it's something that you couldn't get out of your head. It is a pretty unique idea. I feel like it's crypto, but it's not crypto.
Yeah.
It's like
It's infrastructure.
it's a deep infra play. Talk to me about how the concept kind of like first came up and then the process of getting it from just kind of like ideation to now, which is fully live, like distributed network.
So a lot of this came from the work I was doing at Solana Foundation. It was working with the folks on FireDancer and Agave, and seeing the fact that you could build a high performance validator client that could do these really high transaction numbers per second, 500,000 transactions per second, 1,000,000 transactions per second. But every time you'd kind of dig in, the engineers would be like, well, we can't run this on the public internet. This is a tech demo. Be like, oh, what do you mean? What's going on here? And be like, well, the public internet can't really support data rates this high. Like each validator would need like 100 gigabits per second in order to actually do turbine of this scale. Like there were all of these kind of technical problems around this thing might not work. And this was back in 2022. And you started talking to enough folks and it was like, okay, what are the possible solutions here? Could we buy every validator or really fast internet connection? Well, that doesn't scale. Doesn't feel like the right way to approach this. What if someone new comes in and we now just like buying everyone a $10,000 a month internet connection? And like, what about decentralization? There were all of these myriad of problems with these. And eventually, I was talking with Kevin Bowers at Jump and he was like, there's some folks I talked to a few years ago who were thinking about solving this problem, but blockchain just wasn't fast enough back then. Like, wonder what they're up to. And turned out that was Mateo Ward. And he had sort of just sold his company and was sort of on beach rest, where they sort of are like, okay, great, we'll buy your company, but you can't do anything else for like 2 years. And so, he was just ending his period of exclusivity or something, whatever it's called. And, was like, oh yeah, this feels like maybe this is the right time to do this because, he'd kicked the tires on this back in like 2016, 2017, and blockchains were just too slow. It wouldn't make any difference. But now we're in a very different place. And so that's kind of where we were able to get an incredible team together that was, able and willing to start tackling this problem.
Now I kind of want to move into like the economic side of it because you've got the network, you've launched. How does DoubleZero make money? What's the business model? And
so the foundation,
how do you run that?
The foundation does not make money. It's a blockchain foundation. And so like all good blockchain foundations, we probably lose money forever. And that's kind of the model for pretty much all of them. The network itself has a number of important sources of revenue. So the number one source are fees that validators and traders pay in to use and operate on the network. And so those are denominated as a percentage of earnings, in this case, percentage of block rewards from a validator that operates on the network. Those are paid into a system that basically then swaps them all to the DoubleZero native token. About 50% of those fees are burned in the DoubleZero token, and the other 50% are distributed out to the fiber providers as rewards for, basically providing all the fiber to run the network. This is very similar to like, how validators earn block rewards and block commissions and those sorts of things, except for our network, because it's not a compute network, it's a bandwidth network. Our fundamental unit of reward value is bandwidth instead.
Okay.
Yes. And so this is where the 2Z token comes in. That's kind of the main currency of use on the network. And the network really doesn't work without that. We need this value system to account for all of the payments and all these other types of things moving through the network.
Onto the 2Z token. Because you guys launched October 2nd. Yes. I did see some criticism from the market side on like dynamics of launch. I saw you guys come out and say like, we haven't sold any tokens. This is just stuff that happens. But one of the primary kind of like criticisms that I did see was like the move to launch at like a relatively high FDV. Can you walk me through like the thought process behind like the tokenomics of 2Z and what the kind of plan is moving forward with the token?
Yeah, so we actually launched at the same valuation as our last sale, which was $750 million, which was 7.5 cents. The challenge is degens or degens. And so, our previous token sale that we did over the summer, which was available to validators, was at 7.5 cents. That price was determined by an auction. And we tried to sell 1.5%. We only sold 0.8%. So we didn't even sell out the last time we sold tokens. And so the demand was pretty unprecedented going into this launch, which was something we had no indication of. And so markets launched, token pricing took off, and there was broad-based support across multiple venues. And so, the hope there was that was going to smooth things out. But, token launches are very unpredictable events. And, even if you try and set things up responsibly, the degens will be degens at some point. But yeah, the token actually initially launched at 750 mil evaluation, which was 7.5 cents per token. As I said, the foundation did not sell any, at launch or anything like that. The team is all locked. The founders are all locked. All the token disclosures are available, which show the unlock schedules and everything like that. So it's one of these things where, if I could have had my druthers, I would have launched in a bear market. I think it's a much better time to launch. You get to launch without the spectators and the speculators coming in, and just get to actually build out a core, extremely competent product. But because this is a fiber network, and this is not like a new L1 that costs a few, $20,000 a month to run, and you need a few servers. This is a global fiber network. And so, everyone who's contributing fiber to this has real hard costs. And so there's a real importance in getting the network launched and getting traffic moving through it and getting people paying. And we'll learn a ton over the next few months as we head into, the next phase of the network as well.
How focused are you on the actual, and I'm sorry, this is a leading question, but how focused are you guys on token price? How important is that to the team in terms of being we have to defend the 2Z token? What's the kind of priority of importance of that in the chain of things that you guys are concerned about?
Yeah, I think you can't, first off, if I knew what moved token prices why, I would probably have several yachts at the moment. This is not a...
Everyone has an inflated idea of what makes things go up and down. And,
sure.
Yeah.
And, if any of them did, they wouldn't be on Twitter. They would be, on their own private island. So at the end of the day, there's conspiracy theories out there. There's other theories out there. Look, every project ultimately has to stand on its revenue. I'm a big believer that revenue is a real driving force in crypto. You have the unicorns like Bitcoin, and we set them aside as their special snowflake, as doing their thing. But at the end of the day, the reason Solana is the powerhouse that it is today is that people care about it, and there's real revenue that transmits through the network. I was at Solana. I joined Solana when it was about $1. I watched it go up to $250 within the first year of me being there. I watched it then be at $8, a year after that.
And then back to 270. Yeah.
Yeah. The Solana of when I joined was the worst. Every version of Solana since I joined has been the worst version of Solana, and it has had no impact on the price. Right. It's only gotten better. And Solana at $8 was 100 times better network than Solana at 250 in 2021. And so, at the end of the day, what we're focused on are the core fundamentals of the network that'll deliver value and drive revenue, both profits back to validators and increased earnings for operating on the network, and, make sure the network is a long-term sustainable and profitable enterprise for those operating on it. And, markets will do what markets will do based on that information. But we've really designed something for the long term. And so, short-term price volatility, whether it's positive or negative, is noisy, I think I would say. I don't think this is also a first of its kind network. There's nothing like this out there on the market. I think it's very hard to figure out how to put a value on something like this at this stage.
No, it is interesting. I think crypto is the only place in the world where I think recently with Hyperliquid, the idea of a revenue meta came into play. And I think TradFi just would have been looking at that and thinking holy shit, this is the first time that these guys are talking about revenue as being meaningful to products.
It's meaningful, right? Rev on Solana is a real serious thing. And, it drives a ton of forces. It increases everyone's focus on building more performant infrastructure. A market where there is no profit is a market where no one has any incentive to do anything better.
Exactly.
Just as simple as that.
Yep. Yeah. The basis of all value of any asset, that revenue. Yeah. What does it bring in? What does it move out? I'm just curious. This is just like pure personal curiosity, but I'm interested in your kind of like life outside of crypto. What do you do to like for fun, and what kind of keeps you sane when you're not spinning up new networks?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because the process of going off and being a founder, on one level, it's like, oh yeah, this is a whole new level of thing. And the other side, it's like, this is actually fairly similar to like a lot of what I was doing at Solana. From the perspective of just there's a lot going on, there's a lot coming at you from different directions. Um, you know, I read a lot. I'm a big podcast person. We're near a park, which is nice. So it's like able to get outside and walk around a bunch, which is good. We don't have offices yet, too. So there's a bit of that. But it's kind of one of these things where it's like, I don't know how prevalent this is where you are, but like US culture for a long time was like working too much is bad. Working, it's a problem. You're like, yo, you're a workaholic. And it's like, I don't think that's the right way to think about it at all. I think it's like, if you find value and fulfillment in what you do, you should not feel bad about doing that. That's actually like, that's great. In some ways, like that is the goal. Some people find that value and fulfillment in other things and work is just work for them. And I think that's great. No problems with that. But it's like, there's this pretty famous interview with Jensen, the founder of NVIDIA, where he's basically like, I work constantly because I enjoy it. And I think that really, for me, like, what do I do for fun is like this, like, obviously not all of this is fun, but on net, like, I don't really think there's other things I would rather be doing. Yes, you have to make sure you can take a vacation and you can disconnect and you have appropriate barriers so you can go spend time with your wife and all these other types of things. But, apart from that, like my hobbies are very much about things other than work. And so it's like I rock climb, do some photography, that type of thing. But I
Nice. Okay.
kind of always, I don't think I really ever like turn my brain off. Like I don't have things I do that I'm like, oh, this is just,
Well, I think it's really important. I remember this is just like me going for like the most mid possible take here, but it was in like the Naval like Twitter thread that became very kind of popularized. I was surprised to hear you say that working too much. I think that's everywhere, but I feel like in America in particular, I feel like that would be like more of a place where it'd be like work, work, work. But in Australia, it is similar. There is a bit of a culture of like, oh, dude, like what are you still doing? Like thinking about that, or Jesus, man, like take some time off. But I do think it comes back to this idea of like Naval had a good just little tidbit of, if what you're doing is similar to play, like if what your work is something that you enjoy, it's like you really, it's going to be hard to compete with you at a higher level where other people are doing labor and you're having fun. There's quite a disconnect between those two things, and I think that that's something that people that are, haven't found the thing or don't have an alignment in their career, like that's also something that you could probably consider yourself lucky to have, is like what you enjoy doing is actually the stuff that builds things and moves stuff forward. Whereas I feel like other people, the stuff they enjoy doing is sitting on a beach somewhere. And
which is great.
Like, which is
I enjoy
fun.
sitting on a beach somewhere too. But I do it for too long and you go a little crazy,
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I'd also say there's a lot of like we're very lucky to have the type of jobs that we have too, where like I'm not like at a factory or dealing with customer service or something like all day. Like I think it's incredibly different if your job does not have a dynamic pace to it. But yeah, I mean, this can be like, look, the period of the collapse after FTX was like incredibly hard. I think we all slept maybe 4 hours a night. It was very meaningful too. Like that is a period of crisis is where you learn things about yourself and you learn things good and bad about your coworkers. And, it really is this kind of like forged in fire type moment. And, this stuff compounds. Like I think people, I think about this a lot with the rise of kind of AI systems, is that like the value of your experience is the only thing that compounds in a way that AI is not going to be able to very easily replicate. And like AI has not yet cracked judgment. It's very good at telling you analysis or what to do about something, but the sort of intangible feelings of like, how do we make this decision? That is something that it seems like really is still like you have to work on cultivating that muscle, but when you develop it, it's a quite powerful asset.
And I think that does come back to a broader point around like responsibility as well, of like we're terrible of handing over that final call to a machine. And I think that's been like, that's one of the big barriers with like self-driving cars for a long time, is like, okay, well then also who do we blame legally if things go wrong? Like do we where do we put that line of responsibility? But no, I completely agree. I think that will be very, very difficult for a computer. And just structurally, in terms of behavior, humans won't want to put the onus on a machine. Even if I was to train ChatGPT on Austin Federa and say like, hey, this is basically the best replication of Austin I can get in a computer, I know that there's still going to be that element of randomness of you actually going, wait, I actually have an emotional judgment here that isn't based on perfect logical coherence. And that's kind of what makes it. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, who knows? Maybe the model does better in a lot of areas. Like humans are very fallible, right? This is sort of the trouble with a lot of this stuff is like we are way more taken by the wisdom of the crowd than we think we are.
Dude, what's up next for DoubleZero? What's coming up?
Oh man, we got a ton of stuff still to build. So I will say we are working on like even more fiber capacity into even more markets. That's a huge piece of expanding the network. I think a lot of our most important metrics are making validators additional revenue, and so that's a whole big piece to work on and work out as well. Expansion to other networks is also high on the list too. We're working with Shelby, which is the storage protocol from Aptos, on a lot of their work, which basically requires the DoubleZero network to kind of make work in the way that they've designed it. Not from a technical sense, but from like an economic standpoint. And so, a lot of this stuff as we kind of move through it is just like seeing how this all runs and kind of the incredible process of building something and adjusting on the fly and going from here and there. And yeah, it's been a pretty incredible thing to be a part of so far, and just building out from here. This is a very long-term project, so we've got years of work ahead of us.
It's awesome to see. It's really cool to see like an actually unique like infra kind of project come to market. And congratulations again on what you've done with it.
Thank you.
It's a cool thing.
Appreciate it.
Dude, I think this is probably a good place to wrap things up. Austin Federa, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Where can people find you on socials if they're listening in? They want to see more of you. And what do you want people to go check out immediately after they're done listening?
Yeah, doublezero.xyz/dashboard. Check out the dashboard. It's pretty cool. It's like a big map of the world with all this fiber. If you run a validator on Solana or you stake to a validator on Solana, ask them about joining DoubleZero. You can find me on Twitter, Austin_Federa, and the project is at DoubleZero, all spelled out in words and letters.
Awesome. Dude, this has been fucking awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.